is what reporters saw on July 8th, President Trump boarding Air Force One at the end of the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey. This is what they did not see, a Turkish airport catering truck pulling away from Air Force One a few minutes later, secretly ferrying President Trump to an Air Force C-32A nearby, according to a U.S. official.
Certainly a decision to move the U.S. president from Air Force One to a different location and to obscure his movements indicates an assessment that the level of threat was really at a high point.
That threat came from Turkey's neighbor, Iran. Hostilities between the U.S. and Iran had flared back up during the NATO summit, and U.S. intelligence had detected a credible plot to fire a missile at Trump's new Air Force One, gifted to the U.S. by Qatar. An older, more fortified Air Force One was flown in as a precaution. But when it took off, the journalists and even some Trump staffers on board had no idea the president wasn't with them. Both Air Force One and the C-32A flew from Turkey to Mildenhall, England, where Trump was able to switch undetected back to Air Force One. Reporters asked him why they had been told to close their window blinds before takeoff from Turkey.
Because of the sleazebags that we have to deal with.
We asked White House officials for comment on all this, and they didn't deny the story. They simply said the new Air Force One is a state-of-the-art aircraft equipped with high-level security. But even before this, we knew that the jet is going to be taken out of commission for a time this fall so it can be outfitted with more security features after being rushed into service last month. This is what reporters saw on July 8th. President Trump...
Hey, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Rakakradash, and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, Haru Well. Peace, love, and salutations to the hopeful elect. This is your brother Dawadah from the Men of Valor Camp here in Greenville, South Carolina, coming back with another video in sincerity and in truth, and Lord willing, it can be edifying. And as you saw right here, all right, everybody's making a big, point of this because... he came out his mouth and they basically, explained why this happened, and through the spirit, when they were having this meeting, this NATO summit last month in Turkey, I said through the spirit, like, hey, Iran might be trying to take his ass out, Now, it also came out that this wasn't necessarily entirely true. Now, the Iranians do want this man's head, that's just what it is. But they were getting information from, Mossad and the IDF, them tiny tops over there, and they all in Trump's ear, So Trump out here, nervous. Okay. And like I was watching brother, he was going into this, and like he mentioned, Trump is a third generation draft dodger, man. A third generation coward. He hasn't served in any wars or anything, but he's quick to start a war. He's been vocal about wanting to use a nuclear weapon. All right, but here it is when his life is in danger. He's not, even the Ayatollah, man. The Ayatollah on the first day of the Iran war back in February 28th. And I remember I was I was with a chick. She woke me up and told me what had happened, as far as the war getting started, man. And I was excited. She was nervous as hell, but nonetheless, back when that happened, they assassinated the Ayatollah, and the Ayatollah apparently, knew to an extent, he didn't go hide, man. He was in his home, he went down with his ship, so to speak. Trump isn't that type of leader, man. Trump is an absolute coward, and what proves that is the fact that he got on this plane and then he snuck out the damn back door and went and got into a food truck or whatever and left his staff. Who they say they left on there? Marco Rubio, Caroline Levitt, a bunch of other people that's in his cabinet. And now Caroline Levitt has, shortly after this information has come out, has announced that she's stepping down. So maybe she didn't even know, who knows, man. All right, we might not get the full truth, but either way, hey, this man can't be trusted. And if he's willing to let his own, these are Edomites, he'll let these Edomites die, to preserve himself. You think he give a fuck about Jake? He don't care, man. Okay, he does not care. But this is all part of Esau being made bare. And he's being exposed in the latter days as the coward and the base man that he really is. Okay? Hey, the cruel Lord strikes again. This is the cruel Lord. He cares about no one but himself and his own self-image, man. You know? He doesn't care about who dies behind his ass. He don't care, man. And the Lord has put this this mighty spirit, or not mighty, this spirit, on him. According to Proverbs 21:1, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. All right, so it's the Lord that's moving this devil, got him paranoid, made him start this war that he can't get out of. Iran doesn't even want to negotiate with the Trump administration anymore. Hey, there's a lot going on since this devil got back in office. But you saw that one video. I got this right here.
Holy shit, this is breaking news. Caroline Leavitt, Donald Trump's press secretary, I'm sure you've all seen her lie, is out. She has resigned from her position, and moving forward, she will officially no longer be the press secretary of the Trump administration. Caroline Leavitt's time as press secretary will go down in history as an abominable disgrace to this nation. She spent the last year and a half serving as a propagandistic mouthpiece, willingly lying to the American people for Donald Trump. According to Caroline Leavitt, she's stepping down because she wants to spend more time with her family. This seemingly makes sense. 2 months ago, she had a new kid. Now listen, I'm not calling her a liar, but what I am saying is, at least for me, this is hard to believe. Why? Well, point number one, she actually returned for a couple months after giving birth. And point number two, this is the 5th woman that has been fired or has stepped down from the Trump administration in the last year and a half. That's quite the pattern. Especially for a president like Trump, who has a track record of mistreating women all of his life. That's all for now. Make sure to hit that follow button.
Connecting this Caroline Leavitt leaving to to this news coming out that Trump used the he used their ass as a decoy, man. All right, that's a cold spirit you gotta have, man. And that shows you that America is becoming weak. Hey, I remember thinking in my spirit, I was like, they might try to hit that plane. But of course we know it didn't happen like that. But the fact that Trump believed it could have happened, how do we know he believed it could have happened? Because he got the fuck off that plane, which is the Air Force One is supposed to be one of the most state-of-the-art, aircraft to move a president, the so-called president or the leader of the free world. All right, so it's heavily fortified, with jets and stuff all around it. All right, but he was nervous enough to make precautionary measures to be on another plane. Check this out.
Today, we learned more about this story of Donald Trump switching aircrafts back in July and all the people it impacts. Today, we learned that 2 cabinet secretaries were still aboard that original aircraft. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, were left aboard what became a decoy plane, while Pete Hegseth got on the new plane with Donald Trump. This is in addition to
best believe they all looking at this nigga sideways, man. They done lied, for this devil. And this is how he repays them. He don't give a fuck whether they live or die. He cares about himself, which is, hey, that's the spirit of America. That's the spirit of Esau, man. You think Esau was caring about his lineage when he sold his birthright? Esau sold his birthright because he was hungry, and Jacob, supplanted that. The Lord set that up, But that's always been Esau's spirit.
Of White House staffers, the majority actually of White House staffers who were left on that first plane, as well as all the media that were traveling with the president to this event, they were left on that plane that became a decoy, while Donald Trump and a select few people in his inner circle got on the new plane. I'm not going to speculate, but I will objectively state that it's interesting timing. The same week this story comes out, less than 72 hours later, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who regularly travels with the president to these things, announced that she's stepping down from her role at the end of the month. This headline reads, "Staff and press were 100% in danger after Trump left Air Force One," says former Secret Service agent. In the article, the agent says, "I don't think it's being overly dramatic to say, yeah, people's lives were put in danger just by being on board that aircraft."
And what
I'm a reporter myself.
They struck that shit, They wouldn't even have known if Trump was on there. All these motherfuckers then died. And Trump, oh, I ain't even know that play. You know, he's gonna pop out the other side. You know, that would have looked horrible. But again, the Lord didn't have it go down that way. You know, but consider it.
I covered stories at the Biden White House. This is a photo from my camera roll. I, like so many other people, am glad that nothing bad did end up happening. While this reporting is new, the story took place over a month ago, so people are safe, but it would be the right thing to do for somebody from the White House to take the podium and offer up more transparency about the event and possibly even issue apologies to people who were left on board that first aircraft.
Just ain't gonna cut it, man. Let's get this, because this devil is exposed. Jeremiah chapter 49 and verse 10, it says, but I have made Esau bare. Esau, Edom is the so-called white man. Okay, Trump is an Edomite. Most of his staff are Edomites. The Tiny Tops are Edomites. The Russians are Edomites. All right, do you have Israelites that look like Edomites? Yes. Okay, you do. All right, but you can discern the spirit of an Edomite, man. He's bloody. He doesn't care about anybody. He's a damn psychopath, man. You know, that's why they've been known to be considered like soulless. He's a psychopath, man. The Lord created this devil to be the sword. You know, he's quick with the sword. You know, he likes his steaks rare cool. You know, sear that bitch one side, sear its other side, and serve it. All right, when our law says you ain't supposed to have all that blood and shit in your food, man. You know, everything adverse to righteousness, that's what an Edomite is. All right, Esau is a pedo. Hey, it can't even forget, Trump is a damn PDF file, man. You know, and they're going to come up against us for pointing it out. But they're not going to do anything against him and they touching on their own children, man. He called his own daughter hot. Just a sick, twisted ass people. And the Lord's going to take them out, man. You know, now, for anybody that knew that might be listening, you know, now, does that mean just because we know they're the Edomites, you know, we know their nature, does that mean we just walk up to every so-called white person and call them an Edomite? Hell no. Okay, we don't have the power in our hands to do that right now. Now, when we out on the highways and byways, it's fair game, man. You know, we in spiritual battle. But in our day-to-day life, the scripture says, if it be possible, live peaceably among all men. All right, so, hey, we'll speak to Edomites. You know, we'll hold the door open for them. Hey, our apostles, elders, you know, big brothers have said that, man. We walk with wisdom. All right, Yahushua said, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So we got to be harmless. Okay, we in incognito mode. You know, they don't even know that we know that they're devils. We know their true identity. You know, even the Edomite women we might deal with. I know you a damn devil. All right, but I like them. You know, I like the Edomite woman. I don't care what Dr. Umar got to say. But nonetheless, the Lord is exposing these devils. And hell, the Edomite woman is coming out in defiance against the Edomite male. You know, there's this one woman on TikTok and she's exposing, you know, how all these damn Edomites be worried about. One of the first questions they ask when they go out on a date, they ask, have you ever been with a black guy? I ain't never been on a date with any woman that asks, like, have you been with any race of man? You just don't ask that. But Esau, that he has us in the forefront of our mind, of his mind. All right, it says, I have uncovered his secret places, all right, his true nature, how he really moves and operates, because for the last several hundred years, he has paraded himself as, you know, as God's chosen people, you know, as a God-fearing people. We're good Christians. There's no such thing. Are you a devil? It says that he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. You know? And the Lord now has his sights on this devil. All right, but the Lord is exposing him. Let's get this. Because he is that cruel Lord, man. Isaiah chapter 19. You know, and really this whole chapter, you know, is on point. The Lord is bringing down Babylon the Great. All right, but verse 4, Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 4, and the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts. Okay, and we speculated through the spirit that it's this guy Trump, man. You know, and the fact that he you know, allowed his staff to stay on that decoy plane and while he was under a threat. You know, it shows you he's that cruel Lord and a fierce king. He doesn't even care about his own cabinet staff. You think he gives a fuck about the rest of you Americans? He does not care. He said he likes inflation. He loves inflation, which causes everything to go up. You know, your dollar buying power is less and less. You know, he started this war to cover up, you know, their own atrocities of touching little children, man. You know, he's all about himself. The Lord said he would raise him up, a fierce king, a cruel Lord, and a fierce king. All right, the Bible is speaking. The prophecies are speaking. That veil is being lifted. We see who this devil is, man. And the world sees it. They not fucking with America like that. You know, they ain't fucking with Trump. I forgot what summit that was. It was one summit, man. Nobody was even talking to Trump for real. They was talking to each other. Because he's gone around just, you know, calling people names and calling them bad people and doing this. He just projecting. You know, he projecting his own evil onto everybody else. And they saying this man stinks, man. Hey, Robert Kennedy Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, I think that's his name. Yeah, Robert Kennedy Jr. said that on Air Force One, there's a bunch of boxes of fucking McDonald's and shit, man. Dude has a poor diet. He's been eating like this for decades now. So you know this man stinks, man. He been getting high off his own supply. We'll finish off here, man. I just wanted to bring this out. This is Job chapter 30 and verse 8. It says, they were children of fools. Yeah, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. That's the Edomite, the so-called white man. All right, they're children of fools, children of base men. But the Lord said he rules in the kingdom of men. He setteth up over it whomsoever he will. And he set up over it the bases of men. All right, Esau is the end of the world. Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. That's how we know Esau is in control right now. He has the earth. It don't matter if they call themselves white or European or Russian or whatever they call themselves, man. They're Edomites. They're vile, man. Verse 9, it says, and now am I their song. Yeah, I am their byword. They call us bywords. They call us niggas and spits and wetbacks. You know, they call us black. It says they abhor me. They flee far from me. And they spare not to spit in my face. That's the spirit of an Edomite, man. They say we're the most violent people. You know, they say we're lazy. They just be projecting. No, y'all are the piece of shits of the earth, man. And the world is going to see that, because when the Lord raises us back up, you know, as sovereigns on the earth, Esau is going to be on the bottom. Okay? We'll actually finish off there. When the Lord takes you devils out of power, they're going to be like, is this the man? Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 12. How are there fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? And that goes into light bearer. This is not speaking about the spiritual demon Satan. How are there cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? How did you weaken the nations? By way of your sword and your false sense of diplomacy and democracy. You know, you made all the earth drunken. It says the nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. In Jeremiah 51. Verse 13, for thou hast said in thine heart, all right, you say this in your mind, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of the Most High. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. All right, you're the only nation of people that had this God-like complex to where you think, you know, you're going to be like the Most High, man. Verse 15, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall nearly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? This the nigga here? You know, that split the atom, you know, that made the world a wilderness. Think about it. These cities are nothing but concrete and cement. Concrete, cement, steel. You know, you have a tree here and there. Esau built these skyscrapers because they remind them of of the caves they were dwelling in, man. They want to look down on the people. Verse 17, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners. That's this devil, man. You got people that haven't even, done anything in the eyes of the law of the land to be sitting in these ICE facilities right now. Now they talking about they about to get fucking shot gloves and shit. All right. Hey, Esau's reign of terror is not over quite yet. He about to show his ass, man. Revelation 12:12. He's going to come down with that great wrath, knowing that he had but a short time. He about to show his ass. He's about to show his horns and show his ass, man. All right, but this little situation right here is just a microcosm of the spirit of an Edomite. Okay? He'll sneak out the back door on your ass. He does not care about you. So, Lord willing, this is edifying. I'm going to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Makakradash, and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace, love, and salutations to the hopeful elect. Till next time, Shalom.